there is an end bad governance protest going on across the country. And this protest is largely fueled by the amount of hunger, the amount of hardship that is currently ravaging the land, essentially. The poor have gotten so poor that survival is becoming very difficult. So the protest definitely is justified. Now, one of the first questions I want to ask this morning is, what is going on? Is it a protest or a riot? And I just try to check the official definition of protest and riot. In a nutshell, protests are generally peaceful, organized demonstration advocating for a cause, while riots are violent, chaotic disturbance involving law breaking and destruction. So, in a way, I ask, are we having protests across the country, or are we having riots across the country? So that we stop calling it the wrong name. While there is a justified need to protest, I don't know if we actually want to riot and destroy things. The other question is, what is even the cause? What is the objective? What is the demand? What are we trying to achieve with this protest? Because a protest is likely to advocate a cause. But when you want to force the hand of an elected government official, if he doesn't agree to change those policies, what do you do after a protest, if you protested? Because now we are seeing that it's almost a riot. It's essentially a riot, not a protest. But if we call it, for the sake of analysis, if we call it a protest, if you protest and an elected leader, an elected government doesn't agree to it, where do we go from there? Because from President Tinubu's speech 2 days ago, he's not giving in, because one of the primary demands that we hear some of the protesters have demanded is that the fuel subsidy should be restored. And he has said he won't. So where do we go from there? Are we going to continue rioting or protesting forever till it, accedes to those demands? We know that in a democracy, the peaceful, the only acceptable way to change government is not to vote for him after the 4 years. So, but if you have voted somebody in, you just have to let him roll. You can protest to make your cause or your policy demands or your request known. But if you have voted him in or voted them in, you have to let them do their best, and in 4 years' time, you have a chance to not re-elect them, to essentially kick them out of power. Personally, I fear the way this government is going, his chances of being re-elected is looking slimmer and slimmer, because the level, the depth of the hunger, the depth of the suffering, in the difficulty in the land is probably unprecedented, at least in my own memory. So I asked myself, was this situation caused by the current administration? Was it caused specifically by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu? Or was it caused by former President Buhari? Or was it caused by the former President Jonathan? I think if we think somebody caused it, we might be missing the point. In fact, we are missing the point. The problem of Nigeria is not the current leadership. The problem of Nigeria is that there are some basic innovations and solutions that the governments over time, over the last 40 years, should have solved or be aware of, and they are not being solved. A primary one is corruption, which is largely being fueled by impunity. Because corruption cannot survive in a place where, if you are corrupt, your hands are going, or you are going to jail, or you are going to be properly dealt with. Corruption cannot survive in such environment, at least not at this scale. You won't be fantastically corrupt the way we have it in Nigeria if the punishment system, there is no impunity. So the real issue on the land is that there is so much impunity that some people can afford to loot, some people can afford to assign illegal proportion of the Commonwealth to themselves, and they'll get away with it. Governor Yaya Bello, we saw the recent document that revealed how he used government money to pay for his children's school fees throughout their school in dollars to a school, and the school officially released the document returning the money to the government, and it goes free. There are so many government officials that there are information out there about them that they've been corrupt and nothing happens. That is the problem of Nigeria. That is the problem that is not going away, that must be solved. It was not caused by Tinubu, and it was not caused by Jonathan or Buhari. It is a problem that was growing gradually over time, and we are supposed to have solved, and we are not solving. The second thing that we are supposed to have solved that we are not solving is that our population, our needs are increasing, but we are not producing, we are not productive in a manner that matches our needs. I know in the 80s, power supply was more regular than we have it now. Generation has not necessarily reduced, but the demands of the people, the population and the requirement for electricity has increased, but the generation, transmission, and distribution of our electricity did not increase. So our population is increasing across multiple fronts, but our productivity to match them are not increasing. So we are just importing the extras because we had the oil revenue to import the differential. So we are living on, it's like somebody that is just living his life on subsidy. Allah is just subsidizing the country, and we continue to roll it like that. It's unsustainable. So, is Tinubu the problem? Is his fuel subsidy removal the problem? No. I would have wanted him, it's a policy that needed to be done, but I would have wanted him to think about the removal before he did. From all analysis, President Buhari was pressured to remove the fuel subsidy way before now, but at least from what we see from outside, he wanted to make sure the Dangote refinery and the NNPC, the Port Harcourt refinery, were actually operational before he would remove the subsidy, because it was clear to him that this subsidy would directly impact the poor people, and the masses cannot survive. There are people that are just living at survival line. If you impoverish them a little more than that, they will go into, they will have difficulty just surviving. Not growing, not thriving, just surviving will become very difficult for a lot of people. Probably some of the past presidents were aware that the other side of the equation must be solved first before removing subsidy on petroleum. But President Tinubu, probably in his own wisdom, decides that let's remove it and deal with the consequences. It's his choice. I do not support it, but the subsidy needed to go. It would have been better the alternatives that were almost ready had been made ready before, the subsidy is removed. So there is a little bit, we will definitely have to admit that he has some culpability in that. But I mean, we have elected him, we have to support him to achieve his goal, because the intention is good. The intention is to remove the corruption that has been enmeshed into the subsidy regime. Again, I must still complain to the president, so to say, that the problem with subsidy was corruption, not the subsidy itself. A lot of countries subsidize their society in one way or the other. So subsidy is not the problem. Corruption is. So if you don't demonstrate how you are cutting corruption in the ministries, in the government procurement processes, in the National Assembly, in the presidency itself, if you not demonstrate that you are beating down those corruptions, but you are demonstrating, you are punishing the people, then it's lopsided. There is no way that can work. You have not shown the other side of the equation before you deal with the removal of the subsidy. Because the painful thing with the way the economy is now is somebody that goes to work for 30 days and earns a particular salary, let's say 150,000 naira. There were things you could do with that salary. Now, with the current economy, you do the same amount of work, but you can't do what you were doing with your revenue anymore. If you are able to pay your rent and send your children to basic public primary school, you can't anymore. So it's as if they took his own money. It's as if it's the poor people's money that has been harvested by the government. You can't do that. It's as if they harvested the money of the people and gave it to the governors. Now that they have big revenues, gave it to governors that you don't know who they are. It is not the president that put them there, so he cannot control them. So you scrape money from the hands of the people, impoverishing the people, and then giving it to the governors in form of higher monthly allocations that is shared at the FEC. And then those ones, we will be hoping that they do. So if they don't, and they just embezzle it as usual and just turn it into dollar and use it and just spend it the way we have records of some of them spending it, then you just punish the people for nothing. Because you can't control the governors, you can't control the ministers, you can't control the corruption that is in those places. So I think in a nutshell, there are policies that the current administration has taken that should have been better thought through. They are necessary policies, but the consequences of those policies did not seem to have been properly thought through before they were enacted, and they will have consequences, but they needed to be taken. So I would say in a nutshell that what is going on is a riot, not a protest. A riot is not necessary. It will only worsen the condition of the general people, because the day after the protest or the riot, everybody's eyes will be clear that more basic services that you could get have been destroyed and things are worse off and everything. So I think we should protest, but I don't think we should riot. And I think President Tinubu should accelerate the operation of the Dangote and the Port Harcourt refineries, so that we have fuel at a cheaper price, and the fuel has to come back down to the 200, 300 naira per liter range. A lot of subsidy, a lot of interventions needs to be done, because even survival, not thriving, is becoming difficult. It has become very difficult for a lot of Nigerians, and something has to be done. That would be my thoughts on the analysis of the current socioeconomic situation of the country. We pray to God to make things easier and improve our country for us. I'm hopeful that the president has good intentions, and it's just how to go about it that we are struggling with. Let's have one Nigeria. Let's work together to build a Nigeria that we'll be proud of. I'm Jibril Ibrahim. I'll see you in the next one.